Hey everyone, this is DWS Darius, and today I want to talk to you guys about feeding your fish live fish. So first off, am I for or against feeding live fish? Obviously I'm for it because I have a tank full of feeders. I have two main reasons why I use feeder fish. One is because I keep a lot of fish that are picky eaters, a lot of predators that are very demanding when it comes to what you feed them. Some of these fish will refuse to eat anything unless you feed them live fish. Of course, I try to use the feeders to train them to eat prepared foods, but oftentimes you got to start with live fish. My peacock bass, my dadnoid, a few of the fish that I kept before, very picky fish. I had to feed them feeders just so that they wouldn't starve to death, and eventually I trained them to eat raw fish. A good example of how I do that, so we have the feeders in there. I already caught two of them, and the thing is, when you feed your fish, your predator or the fish that eat the feeders starts to build up this behavior, this bond with you. So I have the feeder, put it in there, and he has it. This fish will come to me every day, wait right there and wait for the feeder, and he grabs it as soon as it hit the water. I have another example. So we go again and take another feeder, and we come over here. Look at this guy. He's like this all the time. He knows what's about to happen. I dropped the feeder in. He ran because he panicked. Because he sees the camera. But eventually, yeah, I can't keep up with him, but you know what happened. Now, that same fish is probably expecting another one, and right here I have a little piece of smelt raw fish. So while he's expecting me to come with another one, I gotta hide the camera. I just go, toss the smelt in, and of course he ran, but we'll just watch it. The fish in this tank are camera shy. If you look, this tank looks like a ghost town, but there's about 20 fish in this tank, all of them stuffed underneath that cave. But normally, after I drop the first feeder in, I could drop a piece of raw fish in, and the peacock bass will grab it right away because he's just so ready. He has such amount of competition in this aquarium. He wants to get it first, so without even considering what's being tossed in the water, he grabs it. And that's usually how I train a fish to eat raw fish and to take them off feeders. So yeah, the main reason why I use feeder fish is to train my picky eaters. And the second reason why I sometimes feed feeders is to treat some of these big fish. Every now and then I like to give them live fish as a little treat. Now, are feeders safe? Now, if you go to the fish store and you buy feeders and you just give them directly to your fish, that's definitely not the safest thing to do. These fish are a lot of times in very bad conditions. In fact, I can't remember one pet store I've been to that have kept feeder fish in good conditions. And because of that, most of the time when you feed feeders, it's not safe. However, there are ways to make it safe. Now, how can you make feeder fish that are safe for your fish to eat? You have two options. You can go to the pet store and you can buy those same feeders, and you can quarantine them, keep them in a tank separate from anything else for a couple of weeks. Just watch out for diseases, parasites, and just pay attention to them. Make sure they're healthy. If they're not healthy, treat them for any diseases or parasites. Make sure they're well fed, and then feed them to your fish. And the other option is to go ahead and make your own feeders from scratch. In other words, breeding fish, raising up the babies just so that your bigger fish can eat them. The good thing about that is you could choose which fish you want your fish to eat. You could choose their diet, and for the most part, you're in complete control. Now, both of those sound like great ideas when it comes to providing feeders for your fish, But the truth of the matter is that it's a lot more complicated than the way it sounds. So first off, let's talk about raising your own fish. Now, I've been thinking about this, I have all these predators, and it's been something I've been thinking about for a while now, but it's definitely not the easiest thing to do. So originally, I bought these convict cichlids because I thought that they were easy to breed, and I would be able to breed them, have a bunch of babies, which I could eventually feed to these fish. However, it's definitely not turning out to be that way. So first and foremost, these convicts have been in this tank for, I want to say 3 to 4 weeks, and they definitely are a bold pair. This is the boldest male I have, and he's the smallest. But yeah, they've been in a tank for 3 to 4 weeks, and this right here is a 3 to 4 week old batch of fry. So in 3 to 4 weeks, this is what I have. Now, how many of these little guys do you think it will take to fill up this guy, or this guy, or even this guy? So when it comes to raising your own feeders from young, it's definitely a lot more complicated. So I went and just considered what it would fully take for me to raise babies enough to feed my predatorial fish, and it definitely would take a lot more than this 55-gallon aquarium. So first off, the reason why I chose convicts was because I know that they are some of the easiest fish to breed. However, this convict right here is almost a year old, and he's only about 3 inches. So definitely a slow growing fish, a lot slower than what I need to keep my predatorial fish happy, which need to eat at least every other day. So that means if I wanted to breed fish and use their babies as fry, I would have to go with a larger species. And the next thing that comes to mind are these now tilapia in the back. Now these fish are coming from Africa, they're mouth brooders, and these fish definitely give birth, well, they spit out their mouths hundreds of babies. So they definitely will be a good option. The only thing is, once again, these fish are African mouth brooders, which means you have to have one male with several females, otherwise the male will kill the females. So I would have to have these three females with a male. Keep in mind these fish could grow over a foot long. I think in aquariums they'll reach about 15 to 16 inches. So I definitely would need a large aquarium just to breed them, maybe a 90-gallon to a 125 just to breed these fish. Once the fish breed, they're going to give birth to some tiny babies. So I got to have multiple aquariums for the different stages of the fish's life. We're going to have the newborns, we're going to have the 1-inchers, the 2-inchers, and so forth. Now, by the time I'm finished with that, I will have a whole fish room just to prepare feeders for my predatorial fish. So not only does it take a lot of space, but it also takes a lot of time, because these fish, they have to breed, the eggs got to produce in their mouth, they got to spit the eggs out, and then those babies have to grow to a size large enough to be eaten. So it takes months just to start it, and then once they do start, it takes a ton of space. Now that's the case with me because I keep such large aquarium fish, such large predators, so I would need such a large facility just to produce feeders. So like I said, it is more complicated than it seems. And even if you were to use smaller feeders like guppies and platies and stuff like that, you still need multiple aquariums for the different sizes. The newborns can't be with the adults because the adults will eat them, and so on and so forth. So if you really want feeders, look at this guy, what is he doing? Oh, that's the jaguar. But yeah, if you really want feeders that are going to be growing from young, you're definitely going to have to dedicate a lot of aquariums and a lot of time to do it. And the other option for providing safe feeders to your fish is by going to the pet store and picking up those goldfish and quarantining them. So this is what I'm doing in this aquarium. I'm going to give you guys a closer look. So this is a 40-gallon aquarium, and my rule was just to make sure it's not too overpacked. That's one of the major problems with goldfish. People just stuff them in these aquariums. This thing does look really full, but that's just because all of these fish are in the front. This tank is 3 feet long, and they spend the majority of their time right here in the front. So it's not as full as it looks. On top of that, you want to keep the temperature nice and cool, because before I was keeping them at a tropical temperature like all my other aquariums, and they were dying off. Goldfish, they need the cooler waters, they need the higher oxygen in the waters. You want to make sure you feed them their natural diet, which is algae, mostly algae and plant-based foods. Before I used to feed them predatorial foods just to get them nice and thick, but that's definitely not the way to go. The predators will get their protein by the goldfish, the body of the goldfish. You just want to make sure the goldfish is healthy, and the way you do that is by providing healthy natural foods, which for these goldfish, their natural diet is plant-based. Now that was my idea of making these goldfish healthy, However, there are some complications with this. So first of all, when it comes to actually treating these fish for diseases and parasites, it's definitely not that easy. And that's because normally when I treat fish for parasites or diseases, I use the heat treatment. And basically I turn up the temperature in an aquarium from 80 to about 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And with that higher temperature, any parasites that are on the fish, it will cause their metabolism to speed up and make it easier to kill the parasite. With these goldfish, when I started to raise the temperature, most of them started to die, and that's because these fish are cold water fish. So when you put them in warm water, the oxygen levels decrease and the environment just isn't good for them. They just can't live in that warmer water. So when these fish were first coming in, I was trying to treat them with the heat treatment, and I couldn't do it because they can't handle the heat. So that means the next treatment I will have to use is medications. So this is a 40-gallon aquarium. At one point I was getting goldfish in this tank every week, and that meant every week I had to dose this tank with medications. I had to use different medications based on what I saw. For the most part, it looked like they had the sunken bellies, which are a sign of internal parasites. Well, so I was using my PraziPro, and that stuff is pretty expensive. And when it's all said and done, treating these goldfish to actually make sure they're healthy, it definitely will cost you a decent amount. So overall, I do believe that feeder fish are necessary in this hobby, especially if you're keeping predatory fish. However, you definitely just want to use the feeders to train your fish to eat prepared foods or frozen foods or just some other alternative. The feeders should not be a long-term thing, because when it comes to making a long-term commitment to providing healthy feeders for your fish, it's definitely not that easy to do. Now, if you have the time and if you have the space, go for it, because you get to feed your fish foods that you know are healthy for them, foods that are going to allow your fish to show the greatest amount of color, the greatest amount of personality. If you're the type of person that like watching your fish hunt, you could do it without worrying about the parasites that's going to hunt your fish in return. So yeah, if you're willing to go through the necessary steps to provide feeders for your fish, go for it. But I know I myself and many of us may not have the commitment it takes to provide feeders for our fish, healthy feeders that is. We may not have the space to provide multiple aquariums if we're going to breed fish just to feed to our fish, or we may not be willing to spend the money it takes to keep feeders that we buy from the store nice and healthy. So yeah, if you're not willing to do that, it's best that you stay away from feeders, or like I said, use them temporarily. If you're going to use feeders, use them just to get your fish off of live fish. Use them to train your fish to eat raw fish or anything else. But yeah, everyone, that's today's video. Of course, feeders, that's a very touchy topic. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Your ways of making feeders safe, and overall your opinion of feeding feeders to your fish, especially the people who follow this channel, because you know I keep mostly predators. So what are your thoughts on feeding live fish? Anyways, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. I know you might have some questions as to why he's down there and some of the stuff that you see, but I'll touch on that in a different video. But yeah, as of today, thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.